Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to Americans are taking over Europe, and I just saw this pop up and I thought it could be an interesting reaction. I guess it's to do with some Americans moving to Europe, which I didn't really know that was a thing or not, but maybe there's more than usual, I don't really know. But we're going to check this out anyway, hopefully going to enjoy, and let's learn about what's going on here. Links are also in the description to my Patreon, where you can see reactions to movies, TV series that I can't post to YouTube. Recently reacted to The Shawshank Redemption. I'm going to be reacting to Forrest Gump soon. I've reacted to loads of stuff in the past, and yeah, if you're interested, links are there. If not, let's jump into this.
If you walk in the streets of Valencia,
It's quite quiet. Valencia? That's where my grandma lives.
you'll pick up English, but not just any English.
Oh, is it a place where... Wait, is it going to say about Americans living there? Wait, is it just a lot of English-speaking people live there? Why? In Valencia? Such a random place to pick.
American English.
Speak the right way, the American way.
Valencia is one of the most international cities in the whole of Spain.
Really?
It's a tourism hotspot. It has multiple universities and English language schools. And it's becoming one of the favorite destinations for Americans in both Spain and in Europe. And I'm here to investigate a topic that you might have.
Well, yeah, my grandma lives there. Not seen her for years, so she's obviously having fun there, but I didn't know it was an area where loads of people from Europe and the US are moving to. I guess we're going to learn why.
I've seen on YouTube before. There is an entire subgenre of YouTubers praising the European way of life and escaping the United States. I initially thought this might be just a media trend, since complaining about your country seems like a sure way to get those sweet clicks and views. But when I took a look at the numbers and started talking to Americans who made the move,
They still have their homes in the US.
I learned that it's not just the vloggers that are coming here. Instead, it's the story of what seems like a growing trickle of Americans emigrating to Europe. New visas, online work, and an increasingly English-speaking Europe have lowered the threshold to come, while the United States is becoming a more unhospitable country.
On the latest outbreak of gun violence,
The trafficking of fentanyl and other synthetic opioids.
The Supreme Court ruled to end Roe v. Wade.
While the United States has prided itself on the promise of the American dream and for many remains a land of opportunity, could it be that its neglect of social policy is coming back to bite it? And might Europe's bet on quality of life finally be paying economic dividends? Since its founding, the United States has been a country of immigration, with more than 1 million people migrating to the country in 2022. But the United States is also becoming a country of emigration. Before I go out into the city, I have a couple of graphs to show you to give you an idea of how significant this transformation is. Americans have historically not been the globe-trotting types. After all, the United States has everything you could wish for: cities with varying climates, diverse geography, and jobs and opportunity aplenty. In fact, in 1999, The Economist wrote that educated Americans were the least likely people to leave their country. But over the past 2 decades, the number of passports issued by the United States has boomed, particularly after the 2007 financial crisis and what I can only assume is the aftermath of the 2016 US presidential elections, which was won by Donald Trump. Today, some 40% of Americans have a passport, and some have used it to cross the Atlantic to make their way to Europe. And if you're an American looking to move to Europe, or a European like me who's constantly on the move, then today's sponsor, Speakly...
Oh, getting his money, secure the bag. Oh, that's the volume. Securing the bag, securing the bag. Get your money, my friend.
The annual subscription. Now back to the video. So the data I found on American migration is imperfect. It turns out it's quite hard to get a precise number. I thought of looking at the number of registered voters, granted visas, or permanent residents. For the latter, it shows a steady increase in Americans having permanent residency in Europe, with their favorite destinations being the south of the continent, particularly Spain, Italy, and Portugal.
Fair enough. Spain, Italy, and Portugal makes sense. They're probably the nicest places to live in Europe in terms of climate, to be fair.
If we look at other data, there would apparently be 200,000 Americans living in France alone, versus about 40,000 if you look at the number of permanent residents. But I have a hunch that the number of Americans is greater than that for the whole of Europe, especially because of the time it takes to get more permanent status. Some Americans basically move between European countries every 90 days while they wait for the slow wheels of Europe's bureaucracies to do their work.
Oh, wow.
Yet throughout all these different metrics, one thing is clear. The number of American expats migrating to Europe is increasing. And there are multiple, often personal stories for that. But they boil down to Europe simply being a better place to live. Now, I could go through all the reasons and show you graphs for why that is. like social mobility, cheaper education, access to healthcare, maternity leave, or work-life balance. I could also show you maps of walkable cities. Yeah, I know that it's kind of a Euroflex. Others come to leverage this, the American dollar.
But isn't there also the argument that in terms of immigration, in terms of either Europe or the US, where would the percentage be higher? Because maybe some more are moving out, but also more are moving to the same amount of people are moving to the US from other countries as well. So I don't know if there's a way to sort of judge it both ways, because I feel like in terms of people moving to specific countries, the US is probably the still number one country, right? I don't actually know, but I assume it is in terms of countries that people from other countries will move to and emigrate to or whatever.
Through geo-arbitrage.
There's something called geo-arbitrage, which basically means you can take what you earn in one place and move to another place that's cheaper and leverage it.
Since Americans earn more in absolute terms and the euro has fallen relative to the dollar, American incomes and savings can get more bang for their buck here. But based off of the people I've talked to here, there is one reason that stands out more than the rest: safety.
I was also worried that if I went to a grocery store, was I going to get shot?
We know 5 people in the Seattle area, they were shot in a parking lot.
Well, this is a safe place to have kids.
Carnage in our nation's schools has become painfully repetitive.
Who would have thought that keeping themselves and their kids safe would be so high on people's list of priorities? And as it turns out, European countries are more than willing to oblige these American migrants. They're educated, seen as culturally compatible, and while there is definitely a pool of retirees coming to enjoy a golden retirement, according to the stats, most are young and potentially valuable contributors to Europe's aging societies and government deficits. In the south of Europe, Spain, Italy, Portugal, and Greece have all set up digital nomad visas with substantial tax concessions in the hope of attracting remote workers to increase their tax bases.
Damn.
It's perfect for remote working Americans doing geographic arbitrage. But it has caused some backlash. Not just Americans, but also Europeans like myself that have come to live here, raise prices on rent as internationals are able to price out locals, like in Portugal, where housing prices have increased by 40%, which has been blamed on mostly Americans coming to the country. And it's been trial and error to find winning recipes for these countries. Portugal scrapped its golden visa, which allowed free access to the country for a $600,000 investment, after mostly American investors started hoarding real estate and drove up housing prices. But in the north of Europe, it's a different story. After all, it doesn't make a lot of sense to live there as a digital nomad since life is much more expensive and the weather is just terrible. Instead, these countries seem to be attracting a different cohort of Americans who are integrating much more into local economic life. In Amsterdam, one of continental Europe's more cosmopolitan cities, it's actually hard to find Dutch-speaking waiters. Settling down for Americans is much easier there, where English fluency is greater and where there are actually English-speaking jobs, owing to the export and trade-oriented economies of the North and the American investment in those countries. Recently, this has even created problems for top-tier jobs at the EU when Americans apply. And while the benefits of those migrants are clear, as with other immigrants, there's one important question: will they integrate locally? After all, in Spain, like much of Southern Europe, there's little hope for additional American workers to integrate locally into the economy.
Obviously, you could work for a Spanish company, there's that back door, but that's extremely difficult because even Spaniards can't work for Spanish companies.
So the people coming here remain in a parallel, internationally focused economy, whereas in the north of the continent, where the economy and society is much more English-speaking, there is much more hope for Americans to fit in. Especially since on the cultural side, Americans are notoriously bad at other languages, and may, like many expats,
I feel like he's talking about British people as well. I feel like I'm getting shots here because we've not even been mentioned once. I do feel like that. I feel like Europe, I guess Europe don't really like England or the UK very much. I feel like I'm getting shots dug up because here as well. I don't speak multiple languages at all. I can barely speak English. And I think like it's quite similar in terms of the UK or England and the US. Not as many people speak multiple languages. I think more people speak multiple languages in the US than in England, which says a lot about here, to be honest.
expats in new countries judge that their English is enough to get around. But there's something I wanted to know. Is this American migration a potential silver bullet to some of Europe's biggest problems, like its place in the global competition for talent and for its aging population? Well, when it comes to talent, there are these lofty articles about the death of Silicon Valley and how engineers may relocate to Europe, as well as new startup laws in Spain or France, where European countries hope to attract global and American talent to bring much needed dynamism to their economies. But so far, American founders haven't flocked to Europe. It's more the disillusioned American upper middle class that is coming to the continent. European bureaucracy and taxes means that the United States are still the kings of business. But where it could also have an impact is on the emigration of Europeans to the United States. There are fewer Europeans applying for permanent residence. However, since it's mostly young people that immigrate, this may also be a result of an aging Europe. There are just fewer people in the age group to emigrate to the United States. So once again, this is a bit inconclusive. But what remains true out of all of this is that 40% of America's 230 million people are entitled to European citizenship through ancestry. Some will likely choose to vote with their feet.
I guess there is a lot of, not just European, but just people from other countries or that have family, even their mum or dad's side came from somewhere around the world. But that's the same. Anyone else can do that, right? If you're from the UK or England and you got family that were born somewhere else, you can have multiple citizenships. That'd be pretty cool to have like 3 citizenships from birth, to be honest.
That's a pool of educated, culturally compatible workers that European countries could potentially tap into. But as it happens, it also is likely to reinforce the cultural and family bonds between both sides of the Atlantic. And it's something that could have deep implications on the languages spoken in Europe, and particularly how dominant English would become. While the volumes are relatively small, this first wave of American immigrants is a sign of what could potentially come. While right now, Europe seems to be a refuge for Americans looking for a better life rather than economic opportunity, and there are economic benefits to reap, if European countries can get their act together and offer a more friendly business environment, then it's possible that it's not just the middle class that would jump ship. But what do you think? Is offering good quality of life a suitable strategy? And can countries like Spain offer enticing offers to attract wealthy, educated, and entrepreneurial Americans?
I just think in terms of how much money you earn, that's how it's going to be dictated. And the chances of earning more money in Europe, certain countries you have it, but it's not really going to compete anywhere, is it? But I mean, I agree. In terms of being in the UK, just the way of life, like when I went to Italy, it's just different, man. It just seems so much more like you can just... Obviously, this is me speaking from my perspective. You going somewhere on holiday is different to living somewhere. But it just seems so much more chilled out and just... You can enjoy certain things, you know? But again, that is a holiday at the end of the day, so it's a bit harder to really judge it like that. But it does seem like the basics are just a lot better. I say the basics. I mean, some of the things are worse, but just general life compared to England. To be fair, one of the main reasons for the uptick in passports is that Americans now need them to visit Canada and Mexico. Oh, well, that kind of answers that, doesn't it? Unless you didn't know, but that seems like that would be why then. I think that Americans who immigrate to these countries should make more of a collective effort to learn languages. I mean, anyone moving to another country should do that. That's just the thing that anyone should do. I agree, but everyone should do that. Moving to anywhere, you should make an effort to learn the languages. America being more attractive to skilled immigrants than Europe has been a thing for a long time, so it's great to see some reversal. There's no reversal. Net migration is still in the direction of the US, something the channel has commented above. US skilled worker pay adjusted to cost of living beats out all of Europe. That's what I was thinking, unless they can compete, but I don't think they can. Maybe like Scandinavian countries, but then they're so damn expensive to live. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. I feel like some people are probably not going to like this video, but it is what it is. I do all kinds of reactions and it was fascinating. But yeah, let me know your thoughts, and if you're an American who lives in Europe or you're a European that moved to America, let me know the reasons why. I don't know the chances of that, but there's probably a few of you out there. But yeah, until next time, like, subscribe. Peace.